Hello, my lovelies. I'm Ginny O, the author with no last name, and you may be someone who this year has decided to start to go from writing fan fiction to original fiction. And having been there on their journey, I want to talk about, some of the differences between writing fan fiction and writing original fiction and, kind of like that journey. So last time we talked about the two markets and genres. So whether you're writing literary fiction, contemporary fiction, or commercial fiction, and upmarket fiction, and then if you're writing commercial upmarket, which section of the bookstore are you in? Are you writing romance, mystery, science fiction, fantasy, thrillers? And what age group are you writing for it? So those are your two different markets, and genre, your general group of books with their little rules that you have to follow to decide a bunch of things about your story before you even start writing. Okay, so I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than, this is fantasy if it has magic in it, and this is science fiction if it has technology. It can get a little bit more complicated than that. So it's romance if it has a romance plotline. No, it's a romance if the main question of the story is why can't they get together now? So just because you have a romance plotline in your book does not make it a romance. Hate to break that. All right, so today we're going to talk about the differences in writing style. This might take one video, it might take two videos. I don't know. I have a list of 4 things, and we'll see how many we get to them today. The differences in style between writing in fan fiction and writing in original fiction is going to start mattering more in your second draft. Now, this might be something that you as a fan fiction writer have never done. You've never actually drafted your story, because when you're writing fan fiction, you're usually writing a singular draft, doing your chapter, maybe running through a grammar and spell checker, and then posting it up for feedback. Now, there are kind of some sites for original fiction that you can kind of do the same thing. You can do this on Royal Road. I know some indie authors who will post their first drafts on Royal Road looking for feedback, and then they do a second and a third draft and post that up as published fiction on Amazon. Some people just take their a big chunk of story from Royal Road and post it, format it and post it directly to Amazon for people to buy. You can kind of do this on Wattpad. You can, there's a section for original fiction in AO3. I do not recommend using it because of the whole download PDF function. Makes distribution a little more difficult, distribution control a little more difficult if everybody can just download it for free. Great for fan fiction, not so great for original fiction. This might be something that you've never tried to do before, so it might feel like a little redundant or whatever, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about, stylistic differences, start showing up in your second draft depending on how long you've been writing, okay? Sometimes my first draft, because I've been writing so long, has a lot of these things in it already, and it's just more or less going back and making it more readable in a second or third draft. Like, is this not boring me to tears? How do I make this more interesting? So the 4 things I want to talk about in this video and maybe another video, I don't know, we'll see how far we get, are POV, description, world building, and characterization or attachment. So when you are writing a book for traditional publishing, in particular. In indie publishing, once again, you will have more wiggle room. But in traditional publishing, you are going to be told that you have to work on your point of view, as in find one and stick to it. A lot of times in fan fiction, because there aren't as many enforced rules in fan fiction, anything goes, it can be very experimental. Writers are encouraged, or they feel the need, or they like to go between points of view very, very quickly. I'm gonna say that this is something I've noticed in a lot of Christian literary novels as well. Let's say Francine Rivers, her series from a very long time ago, not the book where she talks about love. That's very are we doing? But like her older works, Gilbert Morris, same thing. Maybe I'm not so sure about Janet Oki, but I've noticed a trend in little Christian lit circles too, is that you are in one person's head, one paragraph, then the next paragraph you're in the next character's head, and then in the next paragraph you're back to the first person's head. This is an extreme version of what we call head hopping. So when you are working for a traditional publishing house or with an agent or with an editor, depending on your genre and what is allowed in your genre, they are going to really push at you to choose a singular point of view and stick to it. So in a lot of young adult, particularly dystopian or say urban fantasy for adult, you are going to be encouraged to write in first person. So you have no idea what's going on in anybody else's head around you, and making assumptions is sometimes frowned upon, unless you make some very wrong ones and it ends in, you know, hilarity. Or you will be encouraged to write in limited third. Limited third is the voice of the 20th century. Kind of notice we're in the 21st, but you know, so hopefully Third Omni can make some more of a comeback. But limited third is kind of like writing in first person, except you're using third person pronouns, he, she, they, it type of thing. And you are once again not knowing what's going on in the emotions, feelings, of other people's heads. All you have to go on is their physical tells or assumptions that you're making. So they will want you to make clear that you're making assumptions. This is the problem with limited third for me. It gets a little wishy-washy where the lines are blurry. So I always try to make it clear that that my characters are assuming things if I'm writing in limited third. Or you will be writing in some sort of kind of very, very omniscient narrator type of thing, which is, you know, Lemony Snicket. I think George R. R. Martin does his chapter things with the characters, so that's more like limited third too. So there are ways to be more writing like third omni that aren't as structured as limited third. That Dragonbound novel is, I would consider it more third omni. It transitions between the points of views of the characters every 5 to 10 pages. You'll have 5 pages of Pia. There'll be a transition with like hand movements and stuff, and then you'll have like 5-10 pages of Dragos, or there'll even be a scene break or whatever. So it's more third omni that way, but it's still, you're going from head to head, but it doesn't have, you are now in Drago's head, like with a title or, you know, a chapter, a labeled chapter or whatever. So it does feel a little more third omni. That's the style I tend to use. It's the style I prefer. You know, or you'll be like third omni where you're not in anybody's head at all. It always feels a little weird to me. So when you are working for traditional publishing, you're going to be, they're going to be a lot stricter on point of view than people in fanfiction. People in fanfiction are usually, I want to know what's going on in their head. I want to know their emotions. Why aren't you telling me their emotions? I need to know. Okay, and that is perfectly acceptable. And if you're going into an indie, it will depend on the group of people that you go into indie with, how they're going to respond to your point of view. But like I said, with indie, it's kind of, it's a lot more flexible what's going on. So the second thing, and what is probably the biggest thing that is going to be the most difficult, because not everybody has been flexing these muscles, is your description. All right. So when you're writing fan fiction, a lot of times description gets left in the dust. We just don't bother. Because why should we bother describing things to a group of people who already know what everything looks like? We've all watched the same canon, we've all read the same book, we're all in the same comics, whatever. We know what these people look like, okay? Or we have a fandom-wide meta discussion about, you know, fan castings of these characters. So in general, everybody has the same idea in their head of what everybody is supposed to look like. What do the rooms look like? You know, if you're writing Brooklyn 99, why would you be describing the main room outside of the office of, you know, where all the cops are? Why would you bother describing that? You know, same thing for Castle. Why would you describe Castle's apartment? You shouldn't have to, you know, nobody cares because everybody already knows what this looks like. You don't describe Vegeta in DBZ fanfiction because everybody knows that Vegeta has this widow's peak and flame-shaped hair and it's very short and buff. And, you know, you don't bother. And in some ways, for fanfiction, this is almost considered a waste of words. And when you do description, a lot of times it tends to end up being in the opposite direction where you over describe things and then it gets into purple prose, which is, you know, orbs and you're describing things, but you've sounding like you've consulted a thesaurus. Okay, so instead of calling, you know, eyeballs and irises, it's orbs, and, you know, just, I have seen some very interesting purple prose in my time. So it usually ends up being one way or the other. Or you'll use descriptions as epitaphs instead of names and pronouns. So the blonde said, or the redhead said, or the brunette. Oh, but dear God, please don't use brunette. I don't care if you're in Miraculous Ladybug fandom. She's not a brunette. That's not a thing. She has blue hair. Just say blue hair. Okay, so this type of epitaph description only works if the main character that's doing the point of view doesn't know the name or the gender of the other person. If they know their name and gender, then using the blonde, the redhead, only draws attention to the fact that they are blonde or red-haired or whatever. And if you want it to, if it's that important, you can find other ways to, you know, mention they have red hair as they twirl it around their finger because they're anxious or tugging on it. You know, hairstyles can be very important to give characters, you know, fluffing sausage curls, blonde sausage curls by her cheek. That can be a character thing, working your description into how the characters are acting. And many times, for some reason, neurotypical people, people with brains that are wired, I don't know, I don't want to call it normally, because it's not normal, I don't think. There should be no normal. Normal is only a setting on the dryer. Okay? So a lot of people they only need a description once. So, but if you're like someone like me who closes your eyes and you don't see any pictures at all, you might want, more description in your books to remind yourself, oh yeah, this is what this character looks like. Or sometimes I have an entire book series right now that I'm working on, a vampire rom-com, that is, her clothes and the way she's dressing and everything is a fundamental part of the characterization of the person. In Gail Carringer's book, she had one character who would wear these outrageous outfits, so it was very important that the outfits be described in the book, that type of thing. So that is acceptable. So as a fan fiction author, you're going to have to learn to describe things, flex your description muscles, so that your readers don't have blank face and blank room syndrome. Just pretend behind me some taupe rolls. Okay, so you're going to have to learn to describe your characters, but not in an overly flamboyant way where you're getting so like worried about irises and eyes that you're using orbs. I use it because it's so stereotypical. I'm sorry. That it doesn't sound like you're consulting a thesaurus. A lot of readers aren't going to notice that you use the same word twice or the same phrase half a dozen times. You might notice, but that's because you're writing the book and it stands out. And you're just going to have to learn to flex those muscles. When I was first going from fan fiction to original fiction, I decided to treat one of my X-Men fanfics precisely like it was a book. Okay, and I used it to flex those kind of description muscles, and also come up with a conflict to resolve. But I wanted to flex my description muscles to see if I could actually do it. And before I started working on The Lone Prospect in any type of serious way was, can I do description? Very important. When in this vampire rom-com, it started out as a fan fiction for a manga I like, and I realized, wait, this is just a little, all this stuff is outside of like the very, 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 very basics of the situation is mine. Why am I doing this as a fan fiction? So I picked up the fan fiction draft and I opened up another thing and I was like, okay, I have to rewrite this and make it original fiction. And lo and behold, I had to add the descriptions and add in the exposition of the story to be, clear to the readers so they didn't have blank face and blank room syndrome, that they were not, having these assumptions. They have no idea what's going on because they don't know any type of the background or the backstory, so I have to explain it to them. They haven't read the canon probably that I'm working off of, so you have to tell them things if it's important to what you're doing right now. You have to show them things. So there's like some back flashes. She has some traumatic episodes. And so what I had was like 20,000 words. By the time I got done, I had like 60 to 70,000 words because that's how much expansion, adding a few more scenes here and there, adding in the description. That's what happens. It's going to up your word count, because that's what description does, and that's okay. Before I sign off, I do want to make a quick note about word count. I forgot. I knew I needed to talk about that, but I completely forgot to write that down. So, we're going to talk about this more in traditional publishing, but word count matters more in original fiction than it does in fan fiction. So in fan fiction, you can have it be as long as you want. In original fiction, you're going to have a certain amount of words you have to hit. So we'll go over this more when we're talking about traditional publishing, but yes, word count is going to matter more in original fiction than it does in fan fiction, and hitting the right amount of words, just the right ones, not too many and not enough. Just right. All right. So, all right, we got through POV and we got through description. So it's very, very important when you're doing original fiction to find your POV and stick to it, and particularly the point of view for your genre. Okay, and your description, being able to describe your characters, describe your surroundings, and to convey them to your audience in a way that's not over the top and flamboyant and sounds like you're reciting out of a thesaurus. Okay, so those are two things that in fan fiction that aren't always pushed. The POV thing, because in fan fiction you do what you want, and in the description thing in fan fiction because everybody knows what everybody looks like. I mean, KW Jeter probably doesn't need to describe Boba Fett in these books, but Jeter does describe Boba Fett because they are books. So this is licensed fan fiction, by the way. If you're a really lucky author, traditional published author, you get to write licensed fan fiction. And so those are two major differences. So next time, in the next video, I don't want these getting too long, we're going to discuss world building and characterization and attachment. Now, I hope this helped. Take care of yourselves, my lovelies. Bless, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next Authortube video. Don't get caught up in my SSO drama. Please don't.